Welcome back to another episode of Iota Poet. Every guest that appears on Iota Poet are a legend in their own right. It's no lie that they're extremely attractive bunch, genetically blessed, some might say. But today is an extra special episode as we have the EBSI team on. They're bloody harder to find than somebody who actually uses the Polkadot ecosystem. So it's a privilege to have them on the channel. In today's episode, we discuss the current status of EBSI, a potential super EBSI, no, I'm not actually making that up, and why IOTA could be at the very center of the EU blockchain solution going forward. If you're enjoying the exclusive IOTA content, please don't forget to efficiently poke that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. The comment can even just be the word badger. Hey, I don't care, they all count. Let's make the comments great again. Enjoy the show and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome Laura and welcome Jose. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Hello Jamie, thank you for the invitation. We are super excited to talk today about EBSI.
Yeah, amazing to have you on. It really is a privilege because, as we were saying just before we got into the episode, EBSI is one of the biggest and most exciting projects I think that's going on in IOTA's ecosystem at the moment. And, obviously due to its nature, it's probably quite hard to share information at times. It's probably quite confidential, but it's going to be great to explore it a bit more and get some more information out there for the audience and anyone who's interested today. So I'm really excited. Probably the best place to start is for you both just to briefly introduce yourself and the role you play with EBSI?
Yeah, I can start. My name is Jose Cantera, and my role in EBSI is technical lead of the project. And I've started with EBSI in previous phases where I was leading one of the use cases, the EV battery use case, and now I'm the technical lead of the whole project in phase 2B.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Laura Kaitazi. Within the EBSI project, I'm the project manager. I've been within the EBSI project, or I will explain that a little bit later. Now, actually, it is called EU blockchain pre-commercial procurement, which actually aims to test specific solutions for later being used then in the EBSI. So the EBSI is the initiative, and the project is basically to test and develop what could be later than the future of EBSI, or one of the parts. And yeah, so I've been in the project since the whole time, so since all three phases. I can talk about this a little bit later more. Basically, that's it.
So you've been there right since the inception. Great. Yeah, it'd be good to hear your experience of how it's been throughout the whole timeline. But I think the best place to start really is, unless you're an IOTA holder living under a rock, you're probably aware what EBSI is, but maybe there's some people that isn't. So it might be quite useful if you just give a quick summary of what is EBSI and what it means for IOTA.
Yeah, I can take that one, Jamie. So essentially, EBSI stands for the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, and the main idea is to set up a blockchain infrastructure in the different EU states, plus some associated states like Norway. And this blockchain infrastructure composed by a network that can be used to provide different services, particularly those services that support cross-border interactions between governments, business, and citizens. And the main aim is to improve the efficiency and trust of EU-wide transactions in different sectors. And of course, in the end, being able to reduce Europe's environmental impact with all this, so to say, enhanced digital infrastructure provided by EBSI.
Okay, so it's really quite wide then in terms of the implications for the EU of how the impacts it could have on them.
Exactly. So it's a very important project for the EU, and I think the thinking on creating this infrastructure and network Europe-wide and being able to support many services for business and for citizens, it's very ambitious and puts Europe ahead in this race in thinking that blockchain can have applications beyond cryptocurrency and it is important. It is going to be, this technology play a very important role, and it needs an approach, so to say, holistic from the different countries, and needs the cooperation across the EU, and that's why there is a blockchain partnership, the European Blockchain Infrastructure Partnership, that guides this initiative, and it is funded by the research and innovation programs across of the whole European Union, managed by the European Commission. So, and it is a multi-year program. So it is not like a project in one shot, it's progressively enhancing, and also is aiming at capturing the latest innovations in blockchain, you know. So, and that's why we as IOTA, we are here, because the ambition of the EU is to adopt the most innovative and, I would say, disrupting blockchain technology for the future EBSI, because the use cases are going to require that, you know. So if we think about products or that can be tracked on EBSI, you can imagine the amount of transactions needed, the scalability needed. So that's why it's an ambitious program, and it's a sign that the IOTA technology has that potential.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of ambitious. Interoperability across the nation states really just set the mind going in terms of the potential adoption that IOTA could get from this. And I think there's a few kind of strands to dive in on what you've just said. One of them is the use cases that maybe you're focusing on, you're helping the EU with, but I think we can go into that later. So I just want to clear in my mind and the audience's mind, because there's talk of this PCP and there's different phases. Can you just tell us a bit more about like the structures and how EBSI works?
Yeah, I can take that one. I was before already mentioning the pre-commercial procurement, so to say. It already is in the phrase, because it's a pre-commercial procurement. So that means we are not right now in the procurement phase where we deploy everything right now out in Europe, and then everybody can use it. But we are more in this research and development phase where we try, in collaboration with the European Commission, really build this solution, test and develop everything. So creating a solution design, prototyping, having really this validation and testing within that phase, to later be able then, hopefully in the future, to get into commercialization or into this real procurement phase. What is important here also to keep in mind, like what gives us this pre-commercial procurement is basically also things we can that help us to decide what needs the product to have at the end to validate if a solution is good or not, or able to be included in the future infrastructure also for other DLTs. Basically, that describes it in a shortcut. But the PCP is a little bit like it's distributed in 3 phases usually. So the first phase is usually the beginning, where you try to submit a proposal. We have been in that phase, of course, as well. So as I said, I've been there from the beginning. So I started with the grant proposal, and there we successfully basically passed. With regards to progress, also talking about progress. So after that, you get into when the EC accepts your proposal, then you are going to be invited into a next phase, which is the second phase. Here in our case, it's called phase 2A, where you do more lab testing. So you start with what you have basically elaborated in the grant proposal, try to start testing and developing in the first testing phase. And then there is the last phase of the pre-commercial procurement, which is phase 3. In our case, it's phase 2B. So for the EU blockchain PCP, they call the phases a little bit different. So phase 1, phase 2A, and phase 2B. The phase 2B, the difference between phase 2A and phase 2B is that in phase 2A, you actually aim to do the lab testing, as I said, in phase 2B, whereas you focus more on field testing. So to more create an environment that is very close to, or that aims to get closer to the reality, right? So that's basically to sum up the phases, and also where we stand right now. So we are right now in phase 2B, which is the last phase of the pre-commercial procurement, and after that usually you need to wait for evaluation and so on, and how it then goes on.
And so what's the difference between lab testing and field testing? How do you make that step? Because I don't know, as someone who's a layperson in this area, I'm just imagining people in white coats and cooking stuff behind the scenes. So what's the difference there?
So here maybe Jose also can bring his technical expertise, but I try to give some high level overview. So basically in lab testing, you have environments that are like where you really start to test and measure values that doesn't have, for example, a lot of spamming or any things that would make the testing environment more complex. So imagine I have a solution, and I generally in the first test step want to just measure if the transactions are working, if they go through, and then I can go a little bit further and give some ranges of values, how many transactions I want to get through it, and then I can go a little even more further and manipulate the testing environment so far that it gets more really into this phase of reality. Then, of course, the last step, but and this is where it gets then the closest to field testing, is really going into the EBSI infrastructure, the network, and doing the testing there. So lab testing is like without the high level, without the EBSI network, doing it for us to see how it works, and then you go really into this real world network.
Okay.
So a detail on field testing is that in the field testing phase, we are also aiming to test with real stakeholders. And that's why we have some partnerships that can help us with that. And also in field testing, we are testing interoperability with the current EBSI. So there is a current version of EBSI with the Hyperledger Besu nodes. And we are going to test that both solutions, the Iota and the Besu, they can for some time coexist and work together, and we are going to test that interoperability as well. And also there are some services already provided by the current EBSI that we can harness as well, and we are going to show the use cases working with that infrastructure as well. So that's another detail of this phase, which is we need to demonstrate that that possibility of extending the current EBSI with the capabilities of Iota.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that it really is, in terms of field testing, you're going out and you're going into the EBSI environment and the protocol they already have, and testing out your solutions on there. Okay, that makes sense.
And basically the stakeholders, as Jose said, really having stakeholders included there. Yeah,
and can you disclose who those stakeholders are, or what type of entities they are?
So maybe some of the persons out there already saw that a couple of weeks ago, DG Mark has published a blog post about the DPP use case. So this is, for example, one of our partners we are working with together. So basically a use case partner here. DPP as a digital product passport use case, just to explain it. But we can go more deeper into the use case part later if you want.
Yeah. Okay. So is that a blog post?
Yeah, it's a blog post. And actually, Dominic, so from DG Mark, he did also a podcast on this. I can share it later with you if you want.
Yeah, if you can, and I'll just drop the link in the comment box below in the description box. So yeah, there you go. Make sure to watch all of this video first, and afterwards go and watch that.
For sure.
Yeah, that does clear up in terms of lab testing, field testing. That's starting to make a lot more sense for me now. And what is the current sort of progress or status at the moment then? Are you currently field testing, or are you just gearing up to field test?
So basically, for your information, as I said, we are now in phase 2B. So the progress is like passing phase 1. And by the way, in phase 1, we were 7 competitors. Then in phase 2A, we were 5, and now we are 3, including Iota. So in phase 2B started like end of December. So we are at the very beginning. So we are right now actually gathering everything together, putting the plan together, and phase 2B basically consists of testing iterations. Within these testing iterations, we try to get as close as possible to the field testing scenario. The aim is then, of course, also to get this interoperability with the current EBSI, involve our stakeholders, and the first half of phase 2B is then, of course, on the first testing cycle, and then you go into the next testing cycle, and this always in collaboration with the EC, so you present your results and so on. But right now we are at the very beginning.
Okay, so we're at the beginning of phase 2B.
Right. So doing all these preparations, work plans, and so on.
And is there like a set time frame for phase 2B to complete? How does that work?
It lasts 1 year. So after 1 year, usually it depends, of course, it might change something in between. So if there is another special request or so on, or something happens within the project and the EC wants to change something, of course, these things can always change, but the aim is 1 year. Yeah. So the phase 2A, by the way, lasted 6 months.
And I think it was at 3 months for phase 1.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So 3, 6, and 1 year. 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year.
Yeah. And we're at the beginning of 1 year. Well, a couple of months in, but we're gearing up. Well, that's great. So is everything going according to plan then?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah.
Good.
So right now, quite good. We see, of course, how it goes in projects, especially when it's innovation and research and development. There are always surprises coming up, but yeah, I think the value that you get out of it, it's really worth it to always try to find a solution for anything that comes along.
Okay, and this is probably a good point here to mention then what happens at the end. So let's say at the end of this 12-month period or whatever it ends up being for phase 2B. You know, a lot of people, when this was first announced back in phase 1, thought at the end the winner would just be the blockchain of the EU and, you know, everybody, you know, it's mass adoption essentially. Mm-hmm. But from what I understand, that's not quite true, is it? As you said, it enters another procurement round, is that right?
Well, that's a very good question, because the EBSI is a multi-year program. And the network, the EBSI network, as we said, now there is a current EBSI, but the European Commission knows that, of course, there are many challenges around sustainability and scalability, and that's why the PCP has happened. And that network, from our point of view, would need to evolve from the current capabilities to extended capabilities together with the needs of the use cases. For instance, one of the use cases is digital product passports that we will talk later, but the digital product passport, I would say regulation is still to be approved, and it seems some of the products will start to need to have digital product passports by 2026. So you can imagine that from now until that point, there is a long runway to upgrade progressively EBSI. So I would not say that after the pre-commercial procurement, the project finished for us, but instead is just the end of a milestone. We are working, continue to be selected in the next phase of EBSI. And of course, that would depend on the outcomes of our of this PCP phase. And if the outcomes are good, we have high chances of continuing being part of the program and contributing to evolve EBSI from the current state of the art blockchains towards, you know, the blockchains of the future, where IOTA has a lot of things to say.
Okay, so it's like more of an iterative approach where it's like this is the current phase, but there's probably going to be another EBSI phase after this.
Exactly. And progressively. So there will be different stages until whole, so to say, I would say super EBSI. It's deployed with all the scalability capabilities and sustainability capability. And yeah, so that would be a runaway. And of course, the important thing is that if the quality of our work and we demonstrate that Iota is capable of satisfying the requirement and the quality criteria of the Commission that later Laura can talk about, we will continue in that game and in that race. That's the main point.
Yeah, super EBSI. I like the sound of that. Supercharged. Okay, so yeah, that's useful to know. So what are the sort of use cases you're focused on? Is there a set use cases Iota specifically focused on, or is it quite wide reaching?
So actually there are two main use cases I've been also looking into in the past. One is the intellectual property rights management use case, which actually has the idea of an EU-wide intellectual property rights management in, for example, the creative industry that can help, for example, artists track the use of their work, transfer intellectual property rights, and receive, for example, compensation in an automated and trusted way through the DLT, through Iota. But yeah, it's an example just to know what is meant under intellectual property rights management use case. That was followed in the past. Major focus, also looking at sustainability and climate change and so on, is the digital product passport use case, which is one that we are doing with Digimark that I mentioned at the beginning of the session.
Yeah.
So one of the use case partners. And so the digital product passport, the main goal is that it gathers information about a specific product during its whole life cycle, during all stages of its life cycle, and making that data available as digital information, but that it's also not making sure that it's not tampered, that it's immutable. And this is where the DLT and Iota plays an important role, especially when we are talking about cases where you really need to differentiate and make sure you know what the material is, because otherwise you can't do any recycling. There are so many cases out there, especially when we talk about plastic bags, where you have information on the product, but then it's not true. And then you think it's recyclable, but it's not. And yeah, so these are kind of things which are quite important and where DLT can play a major role and where we really look into it. One important point here also to mention is the circular economy. So the DPP is basically or enables the circular economy. So it's an important part because it gathers all this information. The circular economy has the aim to expand the life cycle of a product, make recycling possible, to reuse as much as possible of the product. Important industries or fields we were looking at are, for example, EV batteries. This was the blog post of Digimark was about the EV batteries. There they showcase a little bit how it could look like. And consumer electronics, for example, with another use case partner. These are kind of cases we look at. Especially consumer electronics is a very complex topic because you have many parts, really need to differentiate the different parts, see how you can make it reusable, make sure that the right parts are put together at the end if you try to reuse the things. So yeah. So that's a little bit to give an insight on it.
That's useful. I mean, the circular economy is going to be huge. It's kind of a little bit of a niche term, I think, at the moment still. But I was seeing a video the other day, just randomly. I was in a YouTube black hole, as sometimes you get, and I was watching a video on basically clothes in the fashion industry, and a big issue is people just wear clothes and then chuck them out after a couple of months or whatever, use them once or twice. Whereas if there's a big push for this more of a circular economy, which is kind of like recycling, etc., it's gonna get rid of a lot of waste, and you can basically make the fashion industry and clothes a lot more environmentally friendly and a lot more cost effective.
Yeah, maybe also an important point to mention is, and is tokenization within that whole concept, because if I put incentive or reward mechanisms into a circular economy, the people have more incentive to really recycle the thing. So I can really include those kind of concepts within it, really creating a cool token economy that is sustainable.
An IOTA project, is it eKnip? I think it's called. They're doing some
Energy Knip.
Yeah, Energy Kip, is that what they're called? Yeah, they're doing something. Is it in Holland?
Yes, that's in Holland. They have basically an energy, like a wallet, where the persons or how different families get rewarded when they provide information about their energy usage behavior. So when providing the data, they get rewarded. They get basically regional vouchers that they get from the municipality, and then they can use these in different local stores, which is pretty cool because this is a way also to kind of support local economy. So it has really, it can be also a part which could be later introduced in EBSI, but it's also a really cool use case, definitely, and a very cool example of incentives, rewards, mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting because obviously a lot of people in the IOTA community are hyped about Shimmer and DeFi and smart contracts, but these sort of use cases are why many of us got into crypto or blockchain and started to read up on it in terms of the technology and the greater good it can bring. I think that's why EBSI has certainly caught the imagination of the community.
Kind of, yeah. It enables a lot of things, and yeah.
So it seems to me one of the main ones then is this DPP, this digital product passport.
Yes, I would say so. I mean, intellectual property rights management is also super important, but I think we hear it everywhere. Yeah, circular economy, sustainability. So it's one of the main things, right?
How can IOTA help with those two areas then?
Well, in general, yeah, I mean, what IOTA can bring is, of course, can enable easily tokenization, for instance. So incentive and reward mechanisms in a circular economy can be enabled with the services that provide the distributed ledger technology. We have tokenization at layer 1, but also at layer 2, and can interoperate with Ethereum. And that is quite important because, for the evolution of EBSI that already has it's been using the Ethereum virtual machine, etc. And also now IOTA can also perform that role in a more scalable way. And on the other hand, IOTA brings all that has to do with trust between the different actors. And that's very important because in a circular economy scenario, there are many participants, but each of the participants or each of the stakeholders keep their own, I would say, sovereignty on the data they are generating. But there should be some trust between the different actors. I mean, for instance, if an EV battery comes to a recycling entity, that recycling entity is going to ask about the provenance, history, and other parameters about the battery in order to proceed properly. It could give it a second life, or it could proceed to dismantling, but it needs some history about the item. And that history can be provided by other actors that interacted with the battery in the past. But of course, there should be the need of trust, so that the data that is provided by other actors can be trusted. And the way to trust that data is through the annotations of the registers that have been added to the distributed ledger. And that actor should be able to verify the data and to check all the, the days and timestamps, etc., that everything is fine. And in a very distributed and decentralized setup, that is where it comes IOTA, where there is no a central entity having all the digital passports of the world or all the data about batteries of the world, but there are multiple actors cooperating. And in the end, there is an ecosystem of actors that need a layer of trust. And that is what IOTA provides in an scalable way, in the sense that you can imagine how many products may be subject to a digital product passport. And that's the need of the scalability, but at the same time, of course, of the sustainability of the solution. It means in terms of energy consumption, etc., because that's an important concern for the European Commission. And in previous studies, the advantages of Iota against other blockchains in terms of sustainability and energy consumption.
Yeah, that must be one of the things that makes Iota really stand out in this process, is how each transaction consumes so little energy.
Exactly. And that's one of the key points that we need to demonstrate, and we have been asking in the quality criteria that against what we are being evaluated.
Do you think the feeless nature of it as well helps? Could you have a similar solution with fees? I mean, not in terms of just Iota, but let's just say if somebody else comes up with a solution, does the fees impact it at all? Or
I mean, we don't know about other solutions at the moment competing, but of course, I mean, the feeless nature of Iota in EBSI is the same. I mean, the protocol is just the same and the same, and operates under the same conditions. But of course, at this point in time, we cannot disclose what would be the commercial models, but for sure that fees is not part of that. I mean, we in any, so to say, Iota network, the characteristic of being feeless will be kept.
Yeah. Because I'm just wondering, forget EBSI for a second. I'm sure there'll be a lot of blockchains maybe working on this digital product passport. I mean, I think I've heard like VeChain, they seem to do something similar. I'm just wondering whether fees would be an advantage, having fees or not having fees would set you up.
Of course. I mean, our ambition is that the ecosystem around Iota and the ecosystem around EBSI, which essentially they tend to be the same. They take advantage in this characteristic, and that would be an incentive to build on Iota, in the sense that the absence of fees would be a clear advantage when people are deploying DPP solutions. That for sure will be an advantage that you can get if you build on a solution on the permissionless Iota network, or in the, I would say, the EBSI environment. So we think that those environments, they are going to be pretty equivalent for builders, and that is our ambition. Of course, that happens.
And I just want to touch upon something else now, because this is, I'm sure, a key question that many people are going to be thinking here is, will the EU use a private permissioned tangle? Is that what EBSI is? Or will they either use the public tangle, or maybe have some sort of connection with a private tangle, but that's connected some way to the public tangle?
Yeah. So even in the first phase, of course, EBSI is an independent network, but our, I would say, vision is that in the end, the two ecosystems, the Iota and EBSI ecosystem. So essentially, when you build for Iota, you are building for EBSI, so to say. At the same time, that would be the ideal situation, and also bridges between both networks. That would be awesome. I mean, in the sense that there could be certain chains that could be anchored to the main network, or vice versa. So there can be bridges between both worlds, and ideally, an ecosystem that when you build an EBSI ready solution, you are building an Iota ready solution at the same time, and that would be pretty cool to have this bidirectionality between both ecosystems. That's our vision. So we don't want to say build a walled garden around EBSI, but all the opposite, and put bridges and enable both things to be very, very complementary,
There you go, listeners. If you came for a hype moment, there it is. Iota bridges to EBSI, that will be unreal. And also, building Iota builds out EBSI, I certainly think that'll be pretty amazing if we could make it happen.
Yeah, it's the challenge, pretty interesting challenge.
There you go. There's some hype, so make sure to smash that like button. So I mean, is the EU quite open-minded then about that sort of stuff? Maybe this is an NDA, but what are their thoughts, and what have they fed back to you on that?
Laura, you want to take this?
Yeah, I can take this, no problem. So I think here, of course, we have this NDA, and I have to be, yeah, they're pretty honest that we are quite restricted in
Okay.
answering. But generally, what I can say is they're about the attitude and so on, is they're super open to discuss anything. So it's not like they have something in mind and then we go strictly that direction. But it lies also in this in the nature of this PCP that we are the collaborative, where we suggest something and then we discuss it out.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I was wondering in terms of, do they tell you this is what we want, give us it, or are they quite collaborative? But it sounds like it's that second one, they're quite open and they're just exploring potential options.
Yes, exactly. And it's also, they always also say to us, and I also, when I listen to any session or any meeting or something like that, I always hear them telling, yeah, we are also in PCPs, we are also learning together, and iteratively we build our solution, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What level of communication do you have with them? I presume they have like specific EBSI employees who basically progress all this.
Of course, like we have some main contacts within the EC, but it's super simple. So we send them an email, they get back to us. We can anytime talk to them if we need a specific meeting. They're super collaborative. So there, it's a really nice and easy going collaboration, I would say. So it's not like that we have to wait super long. Of course, sometimes it's a little bit more tricky because you have summer season and so on. But generally, it's like really, communication via email, having the meetings and so on.
Yeah.
And of course, when we present results, we have meetings. When they want to see something, then we set up a call, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, but it seems like you've got a good relationship with them.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, I really enjoy also working in that scenario. So yeah.
Okay, and what does like the EBSI team at IOTA look like in terms of the Iota Foundation? Do you have like can you tell us how many people work in that team and what's the day-to-day like?
Yeah, well, we have a devoted team, different people with different skills. So we have software development skills, we have system engineering skills, we have DLT specific skills, DLT, so to say, research aspects, of course, project management, project leadership, technical leadership. In general, we operate as an independent team, very independent team. But of course, even though we develop our own components, and but we are in close cooperation, so to say, as well, with the engineering teams in the Iota Foundation. For instance, the DevOps teams, they provide us a lot of support, and there are shared aspects between both teams. And in the end, I would say the core engineers of the nodes, etc., sometimes also support us when it comes to hard questions. But yeah, I would say we have a quite nice team at the moment, very focused, and at the same time very operating very independently. And that's a nice advantage, because in Iota there are different priorities, and yeah, we make this team very complementary to other departments in the Iota Foundation. Laura, you can complement.
Yeah, so I actually, Jose summarized it quite well. Within specifically, maybe within the EBSI team, to a little bit how we organize ourselves. So we try really to follow a path where we are working very agile, so a little bit more Scrum philosophy. So incrementally moving towards our solution, exchanging when there is the need, having weekly catch up and meetings, and when necessary, of course, individual ones. I think one key thing here, and this is why I really also like to work in that team, is that the people, I think it's a very open atmosphere where you can say what goes good, what goes well, and what not. So for example, at the end of each project, and also we did that in EBSI, we do a survey, we ask the people if they are happy about the results, we ask the people if they are, the team, if they are happy about the collaboration, and so forth. And we take that, learn from that, and try to implement it as soon as possible to make it better for the people to work.
Great. So you have your own developers within just the EBSI team that are almost separate to the rest of the Iota Foundation?
Yeah, as I don't know, Jose, or I can also.
Yeah, we have some people contributing specifically for EBSI, but I would say not so separated because, of course, in the end, we have common components, common software, but also we support each other. Yeah. So for instance, some of our people, we made contributions on some tutorials regarding different aspects like tokenization, etc. And sometimes we ask support to the engineering teams when a question that we are not able to solve ourselves, we ask them, we ask for advice. So it's a very independent but at the same time federated way of working, I would say, which is quite complements quite nice in the current, I would say, setup of the foundation.
Oh, that's great. I know exactly what you mean because I work in a similar environment where you have your own team and you have your own tasks, but then you feed into this greater, I suppose, project that's going on as well.
Yeah.
So that's nice that you have that. Sorry, Laura, were you going to say something?
No.
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought I heard something. Great. Okay. And so you work on this every day then?
Yes, actually. So me and Jose for sure. So I think like past days and weeks, I've worked every day a little bit on it. So sometimes, of course, you have days that you have to focus on other things, but usually every day there's something coming up that you have to take care of. Yeah.
Okay. And can you see in the future more use cases being integrated? You mentioned, for example, like there's going to be basically another phase after phase 2. It's basically like another cycle. Do you think they'll start bringing new use cases in that you can help with on that as well?
I mean, it's a matter of we fully believe that the EBSI and IOTA needs an ecosystem, and the more people building, the more people finding the usefulness of the services provided is going to be key to the uptake of the technologies. And any kind of use case where DLT can help in terms of ensuring that regulations are met, in terms of ensuring that the interactions cross-border can happen smoothly and in a trusted manner. You can imagine, for instance, international trade happening and customs related stuff. It's another example, but we have license that need to be checked, any kind of credentials that have to be recognized across the union. We talked before about incentive and reward mechanisms that can happen around many different aspects. For instance, waste management, we know cases of doing this kind of thing. So we more use cases will come in the future. And the important thing for those cases to appear is that there is an ecosystem of people building, there is an ecosystem of people knowing the capabilities of the technology, and also that the technology works and is easy to be used, and all the knowledge can be spread, and that's the main challenge. That's why it's needed, these ecosystems of people working around.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really good to hear that the EU are taking this seriously in terms of looking for the next blockchain solutions, because I think they can get a little bit of bad press at times when it comes to blockchain, the recent regulations and news that came out around sovereignty of private wallets, etc. But it seems, at least on some level, they really are exploring potential options, and there's opportunity there for IOTA to take advantage of that, especially as a chain that originated from the EU and Germany.
Yeah, that's for sure. We are here in a great opportunity that the technology that was born in Europe can power these infrastructures of the future, that are going to be a digital key for these new digital services, more global and connected. So we have here a great opportunity to make that a research and development project, so to say, born in Europe can power that in Europe. But if this EBSI model goes well, I think it will be adopted in other other economic spaces outside the European Union as federated a network of blockchain where the trust is divided among different countries, different regions, etc., etc. So if this idea goes well, I think my personal opinion is that other economic areas will continue, will also, create similar initiatives, and of course IOTA will be there to provide the technology to support that. That would be the ambition. Yeah,
that would be huge if we took over all the continents. There was an EBSI, America blockchain, whatever. Then that would certainly be amazing. I know time's ticking on, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. I've only got one or two more questions to go. But just to sort of backtrack a little bit on what we were just talking about there. I mean, it is an amazing opportunity for IOTA, and it actually amazes me that some of the other blockchains who you could argue at the time were, bigger and certainly in terms of market cap, didn't get involved in this. What are your thoughts on that? Why didn't they get involved? Like Ethereum, Cardano, Avalanche. Maybe you don't want to get dragged into that, but I'm just wondering how comes IOTA seems to have taken the advantage here.
So I think it's like effect of priorities. So we were at that time like also really focusing on EU projects. That was like kind of so part of our strategy and so on. We really wanted to have this, be closely involved in these EU projects, and for us EBSI was a great chance, and I think that maybe other DLT providers they had at that time maybe other priorities. That's my point of view. And also at the beginning it needed to get more present and more there was maybe not so much awareness about EBSI, and now it's getting more into the public and so on. But of course you would need to have applied from the very beginning to get in the last round, so you couldn't apply just in between. I can imagine that's another reason why maybe in between nobody got involved, that is more like bigger or whatsoever. On the other hand, I think definitely it might be like a prioritization point.
Yeah, you may be right there. I mean, as you say, maybe some of them are kicking themselves now that they didn't quite get involved earlier. Yeah, just on that. I mean, I'm not talking, let's set EU aside for a second. What's the feedback been like from other stakeholders in terms of your involvement with EBSI? Do you think it's really increased the Iota Foundation's reputation?
Well, I mean, there are stakeholders very important. You as Software AG, for instance, is a big company in software in Europe. They are excited about this opportunity with IOTA. They've been keen on IOTA for a long time.
Who is that, sorry?
Software AG.
Software AG, yeah.
So we believe that for sure it has increased the sign that IOTA is building blockchain not for the sake of blockchain, but for the sake of powering the new digital infrastructure. So this digital autonomy for people and organizations, etc. That we are not building blockchain for building blockchain, and so to say, keeping our own bubble, but we are really aiming at something bigger. I think other organizations in the blockchain arena, we were very fortunate that in the Iota Foundation, there were people sensitive to the fact that the EBSI could be a big thing. And maybe other blockchain organizations, even they are, of course, amazing, but they didn't have this, so to say, sensitivity, thinking that EBSI could be a big thing. And they were more like in their own bubble and saying, well, I have already, I'm here in my thing, I have plenty of funding, and why I should enter into this game. Yeah. And we have not only the sensitivity of thinking that EBSI could be good, could be great and a great opportunity, but also the skills that it is important to apply to those kind of public tenders and yeah, I mean, and giving the projects the correct focus. And that requires a mix of skills, not only engineering, but also research, and also, of course, being familiar what is the innovation process in general and also across the European Union, where usually these kind of programs take years to complete and require as well persistence into a certain degree. So in general, responding to your question, I think yes, for sure, that increases the reputation, also increases the fact that IOTA is aiming at having an impact and is aiming at adoption. It's not building blockchain for building blockchain.
Yeah, there is, maybe a bit of reputation for some blockchains to be a bit like scammy or, a bit dodgy, whatever, in some parts of the crypto sector, whatever you want to call it, with all the latest stuff in the news about FTX and all this Luna stuff. So it's great that we've got projects like IOTA who are just ignoring all that noise and just working with, these top governments, these top institutions to help bring solutions that will make the world a better place.
Right.
Yeah, so thank you both for your effort, and I'm sure there's a lot of hard work, not just with you both, but the whole team to get this over the line. So yeah, great stuff.
Well, thank you for having us. It was really nice being here, and I'm also very thankful about the interest. I think for me personally, it's a really important project, and as you say, it just like has this value also to demystify DLT and not having like this spammy solution in mind when talking about blockchain or whatsoever, but really seeing that it can change the world for the better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is probably a good point to finish it up, but I'll just ask one more question then, and that is, obviously now we're in phase 2B, and it sounds like you're gearing up to do the field testing, which is effectively going to be the final stage of this whole process. Can we expect any updates in the future, or when can we expect an update?
Well, I think it's more probable at the end of the project that we can like really share updates. But if there is something in between and we can maybe share already a blog post or whatsoever, then we can contact you and we can schedule, of course, a new podcast if also the crowd wants. And give any updates. But generally to say, the phase 2B will be super focused on these quality criteria that we have been mentioning, like scalability, sustainability, security, and privacy, as well as robustness and technical maturity. And lastly, object identification and data processing, which is quite a lot. And every of these quality criterion has its own world, so to say. But in case we can share something about this or about the use cases, more probable about the use case, which is probably also more fun because it really, you have something more tangible that you can relate to, at least for the most of the people. Yeah,
great. I mean, obviously there's no pressure on giving you updates. Just do what you need to do. So if it's at the end of the competition or whatever you want to call it, that's fine. But yeah, it would certainly be a privilege to have you back on, whether before the end or at the end, just so we can discuss it all. That'd be great. And I'm sure the audience would love that.
Sure. Yeah, that would be great. We keep in touch, I would say. And in case we have something then to share, maybe in the middle of the phase or something like that, then we would be super happy to be here again.
Well, Laura and Jose, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on today. It really has been insightful in terms of EBSI, and hopefully the audience has learned quite a lot of stuff about what's going on and where we currently are with EBSI. So great to have you on, and I'm sure we'll speak again in the future. Thanks both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's all for this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.